Hi, I'm Karl Konrad and welcome to our weekly edition of Australian Immigration News. Thanks to all of you who pushed last week's edition to just over 50,000 views, which is the same figure for the April 27 release as well. We are also quickly approaching the 90,000 subscriber mark due to your support. Tonight we cover the breaking news of a cap of international student numbers in Australia, the cracking down on dodgy education providers, the new changes to student visa requirements, and is there a possible relief for the 485 visa age requirement coming up in July. And just a quick reminder for our migration budget special on Wednesday night, after the budget is handed down this week on Tuesday. After a disastrous last week for the calls of her resignation still echoing down the corridors of power, the Department of Home Affairs Minister, Claire O'Neill, was keen to be seen to be on the offensive. First, during the week, she attacked the dodgy education providers with a midweek press release. Once again, the usual suspects were rolled out. The elusive, unscrupulous education providers. Not that we ever learn who they are. We are just told they exist. And hence again, they were targeted for a beating. Apparently, 34 of them were given notice to improve their game or lose their practicing certificates altogether. This gave the Home Affairs Minister a chance to look tough and responsible for keeping the migration numbers here under control. However, it seems that issuing these warnings is not enough of a punishment. In her press release, she said, "Since the migration strategy was released in December 2023, these providers have seen a 79% reduction in visas granted since the same period last year, compared to a 39% reduction on average across the sector, as the government works to bring migration back to sustainable levels." So let me get this straight. It's not enough to give the dodgy education providers a chance to clean up their acts by sending them warning letters. The government is happy to boast that they want to crush them by reducing their business intake by 79%. And the rest of education providers can be thankful the government is only crushing you by 40% because you're not dodgy and doing the right thing to help make this country grow. If that makes sense to any of our viewers, I would be very interested in reading your comments so you can let the rest of us know. And of course, it would not be a textbook Home Affairs press release without the same old slogan being belted out like a Donald Trump theme song. The migration system we inherited was completely broken, and our goal is to build a smaller, better planned, more strategic migration system that works for Australia. And what is the cost of this smaller migration system? A broken education sector? Wasn't it enough that the education sector nearly died during the COVID period through government lockdowns and travel bans? Now the government wants to deprive them into becoming something smaller. A prime example was rolled out by the Australian newspaper this week in a title that read, "Visa Blitz Leaves Charles Sturt Uni's New Sydney Campus Half Empty." In the article it states, Charles Sturt University New Sydney campus has been forced to open half empty because of the Albanese government's decision to slow down visa processing, which has blocked many international students from arriving in the country. Professor Leon, the Vice-Chancellor of the university, is quoted as saying, "Only 5% of Charles Sturt University's international student applications had their visas refused 2 years ago, but the refusal rate has now risen to 33% and was even higher for Indian students at 54%. Now, I'm sure this story is repeated many times in the education industry around Australia. Then, in a surprise move this morning, the government used the nuclear option, the capping of student visa numbers. A proposed cap on student visa numbers is to take effect by the end of this year. Clearly, the Labor Party is desperate to reduce the number of international students before the next election comes around later next year. Today, a new document was released by the Department of Education called the Draft International Education and Skills Strategic Framework. It outlines a visa cap proposal along with some shocking changes ahead for education providers and education agents. The key highlights in the draft are: the ESOS Act will be changed to allow government to set limits on enrolments at provider level, including within specific courses or locations. Universities will be able to request a higher quota if they can demonstrate their ability to provide housing. New legislation will be introduced to stop colleges owning education agents. A ban on education agents from gaining commissions from education providers if their students move from one provider to another before the course is completed. More transparency on the commissions educations earn when they enroll international students. A planned pause of the registration of new international student education providers, and any new providers will be required to demonstrate they have delivered courses to domestic students for 24 months in most circumstances. There will be a stronger fit and proper provider test, and where providers found not to be fit and proper, they will have an automatic condition applied so they cannot enroll any more international students.
Go ahead. Make my day.
There is a lot more information in this document, and we will leave a link to it in the description below. It indicates a planned timetable for a discussion with the education industry, but I'm sure no matter what they say, this government has already made up its mind on most of these issues. In other news, the financial requirements necessary for student visas have increased significantly from yesterday, the 10th of May. All applications lodged from then will have to meet the new financial capacity rules that have changed. All of the applications lodged beforehand will still be able to use the old figures. The financial requirement for the primary applicant will increase from $24,505 to $29,710. For a sponsor or de facto partner of the primary applicant, the requirement will rise from $8,574 to $10,394. The required funds for a dependent child will go from $3,670 to $4,449, and the annual school costs are set to increase from $9,661 to $13,502. I'll leave a link in the description of the official Home Affairs document that has been widely circulated. Now, for all of our regular viewers, you know that the 485 visa age cap is a hot topic, even if it does not affect you directly. During the week, international student and PhD candidate from James Cook University, Suzanne Hillcoat, reached out to our office. She is directly affected by this impending age cap starting on the 1st of July. She kindly provided an email reply from the office of her local federal MP, Philip Thompson, who has been told of a possible grandfather clause for those over 35 and looking to apply for the 485 visa. The email reads, "Good afternoon, Susan. Philip thanks you for your email and the feedback on the proposed changes to the age limit for the temporary graduate visas. Philip has passed on your concerns to the Shadow Minister of Education and the Shadow Minister for Immigration. They have also provided certainty that this proposed change will not affect students who are already studying in Australia, although much of the detail is still to be seen from the government." Now, of course, that last part is extremely important, and we are still seeking clarity on this issue, and we will keep you posted. But it does give some hope, and I will grab all the hope we can find. Suzanne is a marine biologist and conducting her research at James Cook University in Townsville, Queensland. She is also working on the minke whale project on the Great Barrier Reef of Australia. She will finish her PhD soon, but will not be able to do so by July, and she is already 37 years of age. Hello, Suzanne. We greatly appreciate your coming on the program and sharing your experiences in Australia.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the invite. I'm more than happy to help where I can.
So tell us, how did you feel when you first learnt about these 485 age limit changes due to come into effect on the 1st of July?
Just an overwhelming sense of impending doom, really. I'm from Canada. I've been in Australia on and off for over 10 years, studying multiple degrees along my path. Now I'm almost at the end of my PhD, and it feels like I was 95% of the way down this path, and then all of a sudden this door was slammed in my face. I can barely concentrate. I'm supposed to be writing a 200-page dissertation right now, the most intense academic writing of my career. And I can barely even focus because I don't know if I'm going to be separated from the life that I've built for 10 years.
It's certainly been one of the worst policy decisions I've seen in my 25-year career. Tell us about the time and money you have invested into Australia.
Well, my entire career has been built in Australia, really. I did an undergrad back in Canada, but I've done a master's degree in Australia already, and all of my work experience has been here. I study marine biology, and so the work that myself and my colleagues all do are working to try and help protect the Great Barrier Reef, one of Australia's most economically important features. And the government, I came here on a scholarship, on an international scholarship. So the government has invested probably $250,000 in my education at this point. And they've completely eliminated any opportunity to get a return on that investment if I can't stay here. I'm a stranded asset from the government's perspective. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't even make sense from an economic perspective either. It absolutely just feels like political scapegoating.
Yeah, I know.
You know, blame an underrepresented minority and to take the pressure off for the poor policy decisions that have led to the housing crisis. I don't think students living floor in a house are causing the housing crisis here. And during COVID, there was zero migration, and the housing crisis worsened the quickest that it ever has. So it doesn't add up.
Yeah, I have to wonder if they even thought about the negative effects this policy would create.
We're just a nameless, faceless group. It's telling personal stories like this that maybe can perhaps make a difference. I think I saw some statistics, well, not even statistics. I saw some estimations that it's going to affect a very small number of students, but the average age of someone starting a PhD, I think, is late 20s, early 30s. And the worst part about all of this is I was supposed to be done a couple of years ago. But I stayed during COVID. I stayed here, contributed to the economy, worked 2 part-time jobs during that time, and have been delayed because of COVID. And so this should have already been wrapped up for me. Not that I even want to just advocate for a grandfather clause for current students. Obviously, that's important for me, but I think that it's completely unfair and unjust to anyone, even if they're just starting out their studies. 35 years old. I'm 30. I just turned 37. I still feel like an adult child. I have 30 or 40 years left in my career. That's a huge opportunity. 30 or 40 years, and they're saying, no, you're too old. We want to invest in people who are younger who can have a longer career. So 35 years. 45 years?
Yeah, I know. You still have so much to contribute. Tell us the feedback you've had so far from your local MP.
Well, so I contacted my local representative here and received an email back from one of their representatives who gave me the first real evidence that they might perhaps be introducing a grandfather clause. I wrote back to ask for some more certainty, and I haven't heard back yet. But she said that certainly it won't be affecting current students, which is the first I've heard of this.
Well, we are certainly hoping someone will wake us up from this nightmare with an offer of a transitional arrangement for those who have already started their courses in Australia. So what effects have you seen on your fellow students?
The amount of stress that this has caused. I've spoken to dozens of students affected in Facebook groups and organizing groups. And some of them have been diagnosed with major depression. Some of them are pregnant. Some of them have families. One of my friends just had a baby, and just a few weeks ago rather. And they were completely uncertain. He just submitted his PhD, but even if he submits now, he might not have everything wrapped up before this deadline. And so it's ripping families apart.
That is really upsetting to hear. In the end, students just want certainty when they come to this country to study.
And what about the fact that only last year, this same MP increased the length of the temporary graduate visa, and within a year completely walked back on it? I never imagined, as a very privileged person in society, that I would be caught in the crosshairs, which is crazy to say.
Yeah.
You know, I try and I'm very politically progressive, and I try and advocate for people that are less privileged than me as much as I can. And yeah, it's crazy. It's beyond ridiculous.
Yes, indeed. And what are the sort of student movement groups you've heard of voicing their concerns over these proposed changes?
The student association at my university here, I emailed them. I got an email back from the president saying that there is a meeting next week, the Student Voice Australasia, with representatives from pretty much all of the major Australian universities. And they said that they would add this to the agenda there to make sure that that's spoken about. And there's a lot, I think there's lots of people trying to do the work, but there's a lot of people that I think are feeling really paralyzed right now as well, and not sure how to make a difference. So there's a Facebook group that I've joined, and it's called Call for Action for 485 Visa Change, and have had lots of conversations with lots of people in there. And the amount of tragic stories that you hear from people in there is overwhelming. And lots of people just don't know what to do, don't know how to act. And so I've posted some sample scripts that I've written to different stakeholder groups, some to MPs, some to organizing groups, some to whoever, and posted some of those scripts and some of those emails that I've contacted. And I think some people are emailing too, but I mean, there's lots of other people doing really great, really big stuff. And then the e-petitions as well. There was 3 official e-petitions. One of them had almost 5,000 signatures, I think. And I think looking at the other petitions, that looks like a huge amount of signatures compared to the average petition that gets filed. So I'm wondering, I'm hoping. And then obviously groups like yours, I think you've done so much. Your videos are get tens of thousands of views. And so I think you're doing a lot as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, and I appreciate it. But we're just playing a small part doing what we can. And have you seen any reaction from your university on this issue? Because I can't say I've seen any from universities around Australia.
Yeah, I've really seen nothing from the university, which has been shocking. Maybe there's some stuff happening that I haven't been aware of, but so far my experience hasn't seen anything.
Yeah.
At least with our university. I'm at James Cook University.
Well, that's surprising considering how much the university has to lose in fees from international students. Suzanne, thanks so much for joining us today and being so frank. And let's hope for you and everybody common sense will prevail. And I'll try and follow up with that MP next week for some certainty about his remarks on the grandfather clause.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and thank you for everything that you're doing to try and get that message out, and your advocacy work. It's people like you that are pushing the movement forward, giving people hope. And so thank you for your platform as well. And hopefully we'll have a good outcome in the end.
Yes, indeed. That is what we are all hoping for. I know there are many of you out there who are hurting and distressed by the government's brutal approach to the age limit on the 485 visa. It's up to all of us to do what we can to voice our concerns. Contact your local Member of Parliament. Visit your Vice-Chancellor at your university. Gather fellow students and protest in the gardens of your campus. You are not alone. Join online groups and sign every petition that you can find. Do not go quietly into the night. As always, take care out there, and I'll see you next time. So bye for now.